Hello and welcome to another edition of the Forza Napoli podcast. I am your host, Joe Fischetti. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. On today's episode, we are going to review Napoli's 1-0 victory at the death against Cagliari. I know it's been a little while since that match was played, but it's the international break, so I think we got some extra time on our hands anyways. But we're not going to get too deep into that match because of that. Instead, we're also going to spend a little bit of time reviewing Napoli's summer mercato now that the transfer window is officially closed. And I am joined by a guest to help me out with all of that. He is the president of the Napoli Club Toronto, Carmine Guadagno. Welcome back.
Hey, Joe. Thanks again for having me on. I always love coming on to talk about Napoli with you. So maybe some things I won't love talking too much about today. Maybe especially a draft that plays for striker for us. But I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to talk about some of the underwhelming performances. But let's start with the big positive, because the story of this match, of course, was Zambo Anguissa scoring the winner with 20 seconds left to go. It was the final kick of the match, pretty much as soon as the whistle blew on the kickoff to restart. The match ended. Anguissa was a guy who was linked with a move away from Napoli. It looked like pretty serious rumors that he could leave Napoli in the summer. He ends up staying, and I think we're all pretty happy that he did. Carm, just how important is Anguissa to this team?
I mean, the midfield, as I see it right now, all three of them are irreplaceable. I don't think you can find another player that's like Lobotka, like Anguissa, like McTominay, especially with the confidence that they have now. I think one of our biggest signings was not getting rid of Anguissa, if that's the best way to put it. He's been vital to how this midfield runs, how Conte wants this midfield to run. It's a perfect balance between physicality, skill, pace, attacking and defensive abilities. So it's a perfect harmony between the three, and Anguissa plays that vital role of being the engine of that midfield. So, I mean, I thought he was going to leave as well. I thought him and Lobo were going to leave at one point.
Yeah.
But something convinced them to stay. I don't know what it was, but I'm ever so grateful that they are still on this team, because without them, I think we look at a very different Napoli.
Yeah, I mean, after the Sassuolo match, we had Danny on from the Napoli Club Toronto, and we talked a little bit about how McTominay just picked up where he left off last season. One of the big steps that Anguissa made, and actually I think Danny even said, and I'll give him a shout out here, that even Anguissa might be in the running for MVP, which I think is a pretty hot take, if you will. Not super hot take, but you rarely see a guy of his style. Like, the MVPs are usually the flashy players, score a lot of goals, but he might be onto something, because I think, like McTominay, Anguissa also picked up where he left off last season, in that Conte, we all remember, asked for Anguissa to score more goals. Now, that was largely because he knew we probably weren't going to get as much production out of our strikers last season. Lukaku's aging. He's not going to be with this team for 3-4 months because of injury, and that could be related to his age as well. So we're probably going to need Anguissa to score. After this performance, we're definitely going to need Anguissa to score more goals this season, maybe even more than he scored last season, and he delivered on that. What's crazy to me, and I'm sure you saw this on social media, but almost a year to the date, he scored a match winner against Parma. It was actually 364 days later. Again, that was actually a 96th minute winner, if I'm not mistaken. And then here he scores a 95th minute winner. It's really insane, actually, to me that he did that. And the celebrations, like, I was looking up pictures for the post edits, and like, I couldn't tell which was which. It was almost identical, like the celebration where he bolted to
because
it
was on the same goal as well.
That's right. Same side of the pitch.
Same goal. Like, yeah. Talk about destiny, right?
Yeah. I mentioned Conte, and again, we're going to get to the overall performance, because I think most people would agree that this was not by no means a fantastic performance from Napoli. But I do want to give Conte a little bit of credit here first, because I think there were some small things and then some general things that were significant contributors to Napoli winning this match. I think first and foremost is the fact that he trains Napoli with such intensity, or he trains any of his teams with such intensity in the preseason, so that when the actual season starts, they're in peak physical condition. And I think, like, you look at the way this match went, we really didn't generate a whole lot in the first half. Even at the start of the second half, it felt like a lot more of the same. And then, in addition to the fitness, he made a couple of changes, and we were pretty aggressive in the final, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of the match. We got a ton of really good chances. McTominay kind of stole a goal away from, I think it was either Anguissa or maybe Oliveira that was waiting. He tried another acrobatic goal. But ultimately, we get the winner, and I think a large part of that is because of the way Conte trains his team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to say it was okay, I guess it was an underwhelming performance. To me, it seemed more of just a comfortable match than it did underwhelming, in my eyes at least. At no point did it seem that Napoli was, struggling with the game. In fact, I thought Pisacane, Napolitano himself, by the way,
Yeah.
Pisacane did very well with the team that he put out there. Defensively, they were just absolutely solid. And usually, when you're going up against a team like that, towards the end of the game, you start getting a little bit more frantic, right? You start maybe forcing things that you shouldn't force. You maybe make a couple passes that you're trying to force through that you shouldn't make. This team seemed a lot more comfortable knowing that as long as you just keep up with what you have, it's going to break. You can't defend perfectly for 95, 96 minutes, whatever it is. Eventually, the levee is going to break, right? And that's exactly what I saw happen. And that was mainly because of Conte, the changes he made, and a little bit on the players themselves, because what I noticed was Conte has given the players the confidence to take the game head on whenever they need to. He can only do so much from the sidelines. They need to be their own players out there sometimes and be creative. You saw it in the run from Lobo right at the end of the game. Takes the ball from the midfield and goes, I'm just going to do it myself. But that's what you need from your players. And I'm pretty sure that's what Conte has instilled into them as well. When the chips are on the table, you guys need to perform. And you saw it coming slowly throughout the match where they were pushing more. And then finally, towards the end, they were really, really aggressive with how they were pushing that defensive line back. The changes he made, I thought, were also really great. They worked out really well. I mean, Buongiorno was a great input to that game. He's apart from being a fantastic center back defensively, he actually does pretty well with moving the ball around, even in the offensive phases. And he put in a beautiful ball right to Anguissa's foot across 4 or 5 defenders, right to the middle of the box, right? So he has that ability to make those passes when he needs. And at times, if you really need him to be, he can push the ball and be an offensive threat as well. The one change I wished I would have seen a little bit earlier was Noah Lang. That's mainly because of Neres being injured. If Neres was not injured, this was a game for Neres. I'd even argue this is a game for Miguel Gutierrez as well. We haven't seen him play yet, but these profiles of players, someone who's always looking to push forward, looking to be creative, against a team that's putting 11 behind the ball, you need to break them down somehow. And it was a perfect game for them to be inserted. I think Lang a little bit earlier on, because when he did come on, you saw how often he wanted the ball to his foot. He was calling for it every single time, especially when he had his one-on-ones. He would take his man on, and he wanted that ball to his foot just to create something. Overall, I thought from a team perspective, Conte did very well with how he set it up, how he broke down Pizzicane's bus, essentially, the 11 men behind the ball, how the players were not frantic, not like the Padma game last year. That seemed a little bit more frantic to get that last one.
100%. And we needed a crazy red card and a defender playing keeper.
Exactly. This time it seemed a lot more calm. They knew that Cagliari was going to come in and play a strong game because they didn't want a repeat of May 24th, right? So all these things factored in where everyone worked on the same level to get that result. The one player. Here I go.
Okay, hold on. Before you get to Lucca, let me jump in. Not to spoil the reveal who the player was, but because you touched on a lot of different points that I agree with, and I want to just add to. First of all, you mentioned parking the bus for 90 minutes takes a toll on teams, and I completely agree with you, mentally and physically, right? And we saw that with the chance that Noah Lang had, where I can't remember which defender it was that basically passed straight to back. He was trying to pass back to the keeper. There's this like obsession in football these days with like playing out of the back and playing back to the keeper, and sometimes teams that are not built to do that get themselves into trouble. And we almost scored a goal because of that. And to your point about Noah Lang wanting the ball, I think he's already kind of like eager to prove himself, which is great, especially like you said with Neres injured. For those who are not aware, Neres had sounds like a pretty minor muscular injury. Conte said after the match that they just didn't want to take the chance. I'm sure they also factored in that they were playing against Cagliari, which maybe proved to be a tougher opponent than we thought, but they probably took a calculated risk there. You mentioned Gutierrez. I think he probably wasn't quite ready, or maybe similar to Neres, they didn't want to risk it because he's coming off of like a recovery from an ankle surgery. I think the reports are that he'll be ready to go after the international break. But I think that's exactly why Conte started Spinazzola, because he's a bit more attack-minded than Oliveira is. And he recognized, even though Conte said, I think there was a bit of a contradiction, because after the match he said that he actually wasn't expecting Cagliari to play in such a low block. But the fact that he started Spinazzola suggests to me that maybe he was at least expecting a more defensive game and knew that he would need to put in more attack-minded players. But in any event, I think we're going to get to the individual performances in a second. But I think Spinazzola he was creating a lot more than most players on the pitch. I mentioned underwhelming performance, but you're right. It was underwhelming in the sense that it didn't feel like we were going to score. Like we were a little bit lacking in ideas, and we were kind of just doing the same thing and having the same result. But statistically, it wasn't an underwhelming performance. Our XG was 1.7 to like 0.5. I think we had 20 shot attempts, only 6 on target, 67% possession. So statistically, it wasn't a terrible performance. And I really like that you noted just the general calm of the team. There was no panic, which is, I don't think, something we're very used to. They, Lobotka on that play, I was really surprised, because almost always when we're in a situation like that, he's playing the pass to the right wing. But for whatever reason, and I guess this is just the brilliance of Lobotka, he decided in that moment he's not going to make the easy pass to Politano. He's going to turn back towards the middle of the park, run around a few players, and then slip the ball through to, was that the goal or the chance before where he slipped it through to Noah Lang? I think it was.
Chance before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he was also the one that recovered the second ball, because the goal came from a corner kick. It was cleared. He wins the ball, which he's another one of these things that he does that kind of gets overlooked. The fact that he's in the perfect position, he's able to control that ball and play it to Buongiorno. You mentioned Buongiorno as well. I can't remember where I heard it, but it might have been Buongiorno himself that talked about how in that situation, he knows what the defense are expecting because he himself is a defender. And I think most defenders in that scenario are expecting a cross in the air, for a header, and so he had the wherewithal to cut that ball back and play a low pass. And lo and behold, he finds Anguissa wide open, and he has the composure to side foot the shot into the back of the goal. You do a tiny bit feel for Cagliari because I think it was a hard fought match for them, and maybe I don't know if I would say they deserved the point, but even Conte said after the match that he would have been content with a 0-0 draw, and not so much because he thought Cagliari played amazing, but I think he's looking at the performance of Napoli and thinking, like, they did everything I asked them to do. It didn't happen, didn't pan out. But most of the time, if you play that way, you're going to win matches. Unfortunately, we got that win. So, yeah, underwhelming is probably not the right word. But as you alluded to, and I'll let you have your rant, there were some underwhelming performances. The first is a guy that is kind of auditioning right now for the striker position, and that is Lorenzo Lucca. What did you see from him, or see that he didn't do from this match that I don't know, gives you, I guess, cause for concern, or let's say jeopardizes his position in the lineup with Højlund coming in from United?
Okay, so let me preface this by saying Lucca was never supposed to be this starting striker.
Yeah.
He was brought in because he was supposed to slot in when Lukaku either was tired or maybe in a couple of Champions League games. He was never to be a starter outright. He's also young. I can't remember how old he is. I think he's like early 20s or something.
Yeah, 23, I think I want to say.
Yeah, 22, 23, anything. Anyways, he's still fairly young. Usually football players hit their prime, and physiologically you hit prime age at like 25, 26. That's when you start, really stepping up a gear, especially in the professional world. So he has a little bit of time to grow into the player I believe he can be.
Hopefully he just doesn't keep growing, though, because he might be in the wrong sport. But sorry, continue.
No, you're right. I mean, he'd end up being like Peter Crouch, essentially. But,
yeah.
And he has the room, because you can see it. There is a player in Lorenzo Lucca. He lacks in a lot of areas of the field that I believe Conte will iron out over the next couple of years, hopefully, if he stays on for longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be time for him to grow. And you can see it even in the small things he does. A perfect ball is being sent in, right? Across the defense. The keeper can't get there in time. You are 6'6". Why are you going with your foot? In what world does that make sense to go with your foot on that and try to almost like forward bicycle kick it? It just.
I saw one report that Conte lost his mind over this because
actually, sorry to cut you off there, Joe, but I watched this thing. It's called Bordo Campo, right? They look at
that's what it was. Yes, it was the zones, like pitch side.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and you can see it. Conte turns to his bench and he goes, "But why is he going with his foot? Why not go?" Like he's disbelief as to why he would do that.
Yeah,
honestly, I was as well, because you have the physical ability just naturally to beat anyone to the header. Even sometimes the keeper, when he can use his hands, you can beat him to that ball just from how big he is. But he lacks a little bit of the intelligence of the game to know when to go with the head, when to go with the foot, where to be in front of the defender.
He has a little bit of Zlatan in him, and I don't mean that as a compliment, like in terms of like the confidence and the fact that he would steal a penalty kick from a teammate or go for the glamorous bicycle kick in that situation than the more obvious header.
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong, like confidence is a fantastic thing. Confidence has been a thing that this Napoli team hasn't really had in its players. A lot of players have been, part of the machine. They work in the system. Now you're starting to see players like Noah Lang, Lorenzo Lucca, even McTominay. He's got a little bit more confidence now, and he's
got like mad swagger since he turned.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, and that naturally infects the rest of the team, where it inspires them to do more. Right? It's steel sharpening steel. Everyone wants to be a little bit more confident. push the boundary a little bit more while still playing in the system. So that's completely fine. But it's harnessing that confidence to also be smart, right? Like right now, Lucca has the confidence. He's just not smart with it. And you can see it in the way he plays. Another thing, Lukaku and Lucca are both imposing presence in the box. They are a burden to deal with from a center back's perspective because they are just so naturally either bulky, big, stocky, whatever you want to call it, and they're both pretty tall. I think Lukaku's like 6'1" or something, 6'2", and he's 6'6". Difficult to defend players like that. They'll just naturally beat you to the ball by extending out their leg, and you foul them. But it seems like Lucca doesn't even either he doesn't really know how to do that just yet, or he does it in such a lackluster way where he always gets beat to the ball by his center back. He's just in that game alone, Yeremy Mina was eating him alive at times. Like he wasn't coming close to a ball at all. You hit the point of Conte's system is for that number 9 to be the presence, the punto. The punto di riferimento is what they call it, right? You need to be the guy that the midfielders and the wingers are looking to play that ball into. And if you can't do that, if you can't find yourself to be in the position, or at least kind of muster yourself into that position, you've killed the attack. And you saw it towards the 60th minute mark or whatever it was when they were trying to push a little bit more. They couldn't get anything going because Lucca just couldn't, in whatever reason, beat his man, or at least put himself in a good enough position to allow himself to beat his man. He was just kind of in limbo the entire time. And that's difficult to play through. That being said,
sorry, go ahead.
I hope it all gets ironed out. I think he can be one of Italy's best strikers, but it's just not right now.
Yeah, he's going to need time under Conte to learn how to play that specific role. Not to defend him too much. I mean, he's a Napoli player, so I don't mind defending him. But I also feel like this was not a great matchup for him because for such a big guy, he doesn't have pace and actually clearly is at least not as strong as Yeremy Mina is because he was pretty much manhandled by Mina, whereas a guy like Lukaku can handle that. And I wonder if we had Højlund already in the lineup, let's say, if he might have been a better matchup because at least he has the pace. He may not have the strength, but he can beat Mina with his pace. Whereas Lucca was kind of like at a disadvantage on both fronts. And that's something like that can be improved. It's just like hit the weights in the gym and let Conte teach you how to hold the ball up. And when you're that big, it should be easier actually to hold the ball up because you can keep the ball further away from you while still backing into the defender. So yeah, I think that'll come. I'm curious to see how now Conte decides who he plays. I mean, we're going to have so many games. They're probably going to both need to play anyways. But I think having Højlund, and we'll talk about the Mercato in a minute, but I think that at least gives you a few options, whereas we were kind of out of nowhere, like right before the start of the season, kind of cornered into having to start Lucca in a position we really didn't want him to be starting in. The other player that has gotten a little bit of flack, I would say, for his performance in this match is Kevin De Bruyne. I wouldn't say he played bad necessarily. Two things stood out to me. One was something that I heard a few different people say. I think I heard it on In the Shadow of Vesuvio and maybe Italian Football Podcast, where it's clear that he's still kind of developing that chemistry with his teammates. Sometimes it looks like he's going to the same position as some of the other midfielders, and they're all kind of getting used to this idea of playing with 4 midfielders and De Bruyne being like this kind of free roaming role. But what really stood out to me was that his set piece delivery was really poor in this match. And that was something that I had called out before the season started, because this has been an issue with Napoli for so long now. I don't know if there's something on that grass that no matter, even if it's the best midfielder of his generation, as soon as your foot touches that grass at the Maradona, you can't take a free kick. But it just felt like cross after cross could either didn't get past the first man or was overhit, or there was one that just kind of floated into the arms of Caprile. So I was a little bit disappointed with our set pieces, especially again when we don't have our preferred striker. We are going to need to find goals from things like corner kicks and free kicks, and in this instance, we just could not play a decent free kick.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with at least from the set piece perspective. It wasn't the greatest. I don't know. I honestly expected more out of De Bruyne in that regard. I mean, in my generation, from since I don't know, I was 8 years old. I started watching football, 8, 9 years old. He's probably been one of the best midfielders I've ever seen. Right? It's him, Modric, bias, but Hamsik was also one of the best midfielders ever. Pirlo, right? And the one thing that these guys all had in common is that they were fantastic passers of the ball. They could ping you out from anywhere in the field and put it right on your foot wherever you needed it to be. So coming in with that expectation, I thought, thank God that we don't have Politano taking corners anymore, and now we have Kevin De Bruyne, because
Yeah.
Politano would take a corner and without fail, it would always hit the first man. But
Yeah.
now that I'm seeing it coming out of De Bruyne, maybe it is a system thing, something that they need to work on a little bit more off the training grounds. You're right. We don't have our preferred striker right now, so we're gonna have to find goals elsewhere. Maybe there's something you can tweak where you play some more short corners or something that can give you a little bit more output than what we saw from last game. Once again, this could be a one-off, right? Just had a bad game. It is what it is. Or
That's what I'm hoping, right?
Yeah.
Like these guys are probably still sore from the preseason. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions just yet.
Yeah.
The two players that stood out to me, though, from a positive standpoint, like I mentioned Spinazzola earlier, I thought both of the wingers were really good in this match, even though, we all have our criticisms of Politano, although I think he's been pretty widely accepted now. I think he's highly regarded for what he contributes on the defensive end and just his overall work rate. Like there was one play where I can't remember who played. I think it was Rachmani that played a long ball to him, or Lobotka, like a long switch to him.
Yeah.
Or a clearance. Maybe even De Bruyne, actually. I can't remember who it was. But
I think it was De Bruyne.
Yeah, and it looked like this ball was going to go out, especially, it's late in the match. He's been running up and down that wing all match, and he still got there and kept it in. He was so tired that at one point he called Noah Lang to take the corner kick for him, which I think we were all happy about, to your point about his inability to play across. But I thought Spinazzola and Politano were the ones that were creating the most for us in this match. And it was not for any of their deficiencies. It was more for the lack of finishing within the area that nothing came of, their efforts in this match.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that 100%. I really like the way, more so Politano than Spinazzola, but they were both very effective with what they tried to do, and the plan was right. I mean, in theory, you have a 6'6" striker in the box. You're just going to cut in and throw as many balls into the box as possible. One's going to land eventually, right? So, the one thing I really did like about specifically Politano was how present he was on that wing, always taking his man on and trying to drive that ball forward. A lot of the times, usually he does that Politano thing, cuts on the left, puts the ball in, something that you expect. But this time around, he was changing it up a bit. He was keeping his defenders a little bit more on their toes, where he became a little bit more unpredictable in that sense, and it really opened up a lot more space for Di Lorenzo to come in from behind him and use him as a flank on the wing, or even there was at times McTominay coming across, or even Anguissa making that run in between the defenders as Politano was dribbling on through. So I thought that was really well done from him. Also, I've had my thoughts about Politano in the past, but that was with a different system. In this Conte system, I don't think you can play it without Politano. He's very much a necessity in this squad, purely because of the fact of how hard he works to track all the way back and basically transitions Napoli into a 5-back instead of playing a 4-back. So you have that versatility out of that winger to also be a fullback and then also be a number 10. He just does a little bit of everything, and he does them all really well right now. Spinazzola, like I said before, with Spinazzola and hopefully soon Gutierrez coming in, these are very high output offensive fullbacks, and it's needed in a game like this. And I thought it was a very good mix of having someone like a Spinazzola or maybe even a Gutierrez in the future to be on the wing to stretch the field a little bit and give McTominay more space on the half spaces so that he can drive the ball, pick it up from them off the wing, drive the ball into the box, and make something work, right? That balance that you have from both sides of the pitch really makes it hard for defenses to cope with, and it takes a lot of brain power and it takes a lot of manpower to try to stop those threats from out wide, which leaves you a lot more space in the middle. So, yeah, and you saw it at times during the Cagliari game where they were doubling up on the wings and then leaving a little bit more space in the middle, and that's where you got those balls into Anguissa or McTominay when he dribbled across a couple and took a shot on target. That's how those spaces start to open up. So, yeah, I mean, I thought they both had fantastic games as well as the midfield, and I'd say including KDB. I wouldn't say it was his best game, but he was serviceable.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm criticizing his crossing, but everything else he does is like you can see his football IQ is just on another level of some of the passes he makes, his vision, the way he positions himself. He's also kind of playing in a new role to him as well that he's going to take some getting used to, right? Where he's playing kind of, it looks like as a regista when we're in our half and then a 10 when we're in the attacking half. I guess you call that a box-to-box midfielder, but it's kind of feels more like he's being both Lobotka and himself while also playing with Lobotka, which obviously doesn't hurt. Politano, if I'm not mistaken, he was the one that played the cross when on that chance that McTominay stole. He nearly scored himself doing his kind of padded in. He's kind of stolen the Tirajir from Insigne. Speaking of confidence or lack thereof. I thought Spinazzola, I was happy with Spinazzola's performance. That cross to Lucca in the first half where he tried the scissor kick was from Spina. There was a similar cross before that all it needed was a touch from anyone and the ball just kind of went right through everybody and went out for a goal kick. But yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt to have a player like Gutierrez who's a lot younger and probably has a lot more pace and and then you add the wingers as well. Last thing I'll add before we move on to our assessment of the summer mercato is that we also got a Giuseppe Ambrosino appearance. So in week 1, we got to see Antonio Vergara. In week 2, we see Ambrosino, and he actually did okay for the short amount of time he was on the pitch. He took on a man. He was involved. Anything from Ambrosino or just thoughts on seeing these? For the longest time we used to say play the youth, and it looks like we're just finally getting to play a few of our youth players, even if they're like 23 now. In Italy, that's like super young.
Yeah, it's really young. No, honestly, I thought he did very well for a debut. Yeah. He's been through the system. He's getting his first debut in a tough match, 0-0. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for the kid to come on and do something, and he did. I thought he did really well. Like you said, he took on a man. He was trying to be more active in the 18-yard box, right? He gave you a bit of a different profile than what Lucca was, right? He's a little bit more mobile. He's got a little bit more pace on him, so maybe he can cause a bit more disruption in the box. Is this his first start in Serie A, period?
It is. Yeah. It was his Serie A debut. He played in Serie B.
Yeah.
And to do it again, very obviously the same thing like Vergara. They kind of both did similar Instagram posts after their debuts where they posted, how their first, appearance with Napoli when they were like 12 or whatever, and some photos because they kind of both progressed through the Napoli youth system and made their debuts with the senior team they went through the system with.
Yeah, I mean, like there's not much else you can really say about him. He's a kid from Naples who got his chance, and I thought he took his chance really, really well. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a little bit more of him as the season progresses. If you're up a couple goals, towards the end of the match, play him, right? Let him get some minutes under him so he can have that first team exposure and, get used to Serie A pace. Because from what I've seen from the both of them, especially Vergara, more so than Ambrosino, I thought they are very good football players, especially Vergara. I think he'll do really well in Serie A. But just give him those minutes. You have the team, right? You have the buffer to, allow them to play a few minutes here and there, and who knows? Maybe they do something. That's the best part. There's so much upside to this that there's really no reason to take it away from them, in my opinion. I thought they were both very, especially from those first two matches, they both did very well for their debuts.
Yeah, no, I agree. Apparently, Napoli turned down offers from Ajax and a couple other clubs for Ambrosino. So clearly, there are clubs out there that see the potential. If he does get any kind of significant playing time, I imagine it would be in this first half of the season while Lukaku's out and he's the third striker option playing twice a week. I think he can get a decent amount of time. And then we'll have to see how Lukaku's recovery goes. Like, I hate to jinx it or anything, but I have this very bad feeling that Lukaku's going to have a setback and end up missing even more than I know I do. Pardon that here, but all right. So let's move on to the Mercato. I think that's a pretty solid match review. Before we do that, let me just quickly run through the all the activity. There's quite a bit, so this might take a few seconds, but I'll quickly run through all the activity that Napoli had, and then we can both give our ratings for this summer Mercato. So if we start with the departures, I just went in order of the transactions, not in terms of the values, but Gianluca Gaetano was redeemed. So this was an obligation to buy, so there was not really a big thing about that, but we cashed in on him. Nathan was redeemed by Real Betis. Caprile was redeemed by Cagliari. Rafa Marin was loaned to Villarreal. Michael Foloruncio. We did a lot of business with Cagliari for some reason this season or last season. So
feel bad for them. So we
actually, and I think this is a great move for Foloruncio. They have an option to buy. I think they're going to use it because he looked good in that match. Ngonge went to Torino on loan with option to buy. Lindstrom, we all forgot about him. Somehow we got a €1.5 million loan for him to Wolfsburg. They have an option to buy as well. Zerbin to Cremonese with a conditional obligation. I think it's conditional on staying in Serie A. The big one, of course, we cashed in on Victor Osimhen for €75 million. And, at the time I was like, if we pulled the trigger, we could have made a ton more money. And then you look at this Lookman situation with Atalanta, and they're likely to lose him for free unless they can get an offer from a Turkish club or maybe a January move. So I'm pretty happy with $75 million for Osimhen, considering he gave us, or was a huge part of a Scudetto as well. Cayusta, another one of these guys that didn't work out. He was one of the Rudy Garcia players. By the way, Rudy Garcia, I was gonna make a joke. So we're recording this on Thursday, and Belgium won 6-0 in their international match against Liechtenstein.
Oh, okay.
Liechtenstein, yeah. But I was gonna make a joke that maybe we need to bring Rudy back to get the best of De Bruyne, because
please no.
But anyhow, Cayusta was a Rudy Garcia signing, or during the Rudy Garcia era. He's gone out on loan to Ipswich. Simeone went to Torino with Ngonge. Raspadori, of course, to Atletico Madrid. They're off to the worst start in the club's history under Simeone. I think a draw and 2 defeats, if I'm not mistaken. So that's not on Raspadori entirely. He had some fault in one, but just an update on his situation. I threw Khedira in there. He went on loan. There's a whole bunch of Primavera players and Hassan, guys like that went out as well that I didn't include here. And then finally, Zanoli was expected to go to Udinese. We just held off until we can see if we can get a deal done for Wanlu. But he went to Udinese. So altogether, we generated €115 million in revenue. That does not include any options to buy, because we don't know if those options are going to be redeemed. On the arrival side, Of course, we got De Bruyne on a free transfer from City, Luca Marianucci for 9 million euros from Empoli, Noah Lang for 25 million euros. Lorenzo Lucca is a 9 million euro loan with obligation to buy for 26 million. Bokma for 31 million from Bologna. Vanya Milinkovic-Savic, 15 million euro loan with a 6 million euro obligation to buy, which, I mean, that's basically just a purchase with a deferred payment. You don't often see gigantic loan fees like that. Gutierrez for 18 million. Elmas, 2 million euro loan with option to buy for 16 million. And Højlund, 6 million euro loan with a 44 million conditional obligation. But I think it's basically, if Napoli qualify for the Champions League, we're going to be redeeming him. So that adds up to 126.45 million on the expense side, which is a net spend, which is wild. That basically we've swapped out all the guys that don't play for significantly better players, and it only cost us an extra 11.5 million euros. Now, I will caveat that by saying a big part of that is because of these, you saw all those loans with obligations to buy. What that effectively does is defer some of the payment for some of these players to future years, specifically, the obligations on Lucca, Milinkovic-Savic, and Højlund. That's 76 million euros that it just helps with cash flow more than anything that we've deferred those payments. I won't get into the whole amortization. That's a whole other way that we are able to spread the payments for these players, because when you sign a player, I've talked about this on the pod before, but I'll just very quickly explain. If we look at a player like Sam Bokma, 31 million euro transfer fee, 5-year contract. Most of these players signed 5-year contracts, actually. ADL's pushing for, now you can do, I think, up to 6 years. And what that allows you to do is spread the payment of the transfer fee, or amortize that payment over the life of the contract. Now, what Napoli does is we front load our amortization. So we do 40% in year one, then 30, 20, 7, 3. But in any event, like when I did the math on all the incoming players, only about between the loans for this season and the players, the first year of amortization of the players we actually bought, it's something like 65 million euros only that hits the books in 2025. But on the revenue side, when you sell a player, you account for that revenue in the current year. So that 115 million euros is still revenue. We only account for 65 million of the purchases, which means we're actually going to show a profit on our books on player transactions of 50 million euros. So, I mean, it's sidebar on the accounting, but I just wanted to kind of run through all of those players before I hand it over to you to get your thoughts overall on the Mercato and what you would rate it.
So my rating, I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Okay. So let's hear why.
Well, I'll get into multiple reasons why. To me, it's by far the best Mercato we've ever had in my lifetime as a Napoli player, as a Napoli supporter. Not a Napoli player, I wish. But just from the fact that you brought up, right? We got rid of the guys who didn't play. Some of them not great players. Some of them I am a little bit disappointed to see go. Namely, Raspadori. I thought I was a big believer in Raspadori, and if he had consistent minutes in Serie A, he would have been one of the best in Italy for sure. I'm also kind of sad to see Nathan go. I thought Nathan didn't get a fair shake. He came in, bad coaching, 3 manager changes, terrible season. You can't really judge a player on that. And you can see it now. He's doing pretty well.
He's doing well with Betis. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So, I felt like if we just stuck with him a little bit longer, he could have been a pretty good backup to Buongiorno, being on the left side. Some of the players we needed to let go. I mean, Simeone comes to mind. I love Simeone. He's won 2 Scudetti, but he just didn't fit anymore. He just didn't belong on this team. And it's probably right to let him go to a team where he can maybe flourish a little bit more and get those regular minutes back. And then we replaced him with some of the best players that have played in Serie A last season. Sam Bokma specifically was, he's 31 million. He played 35 matches last year. He had, I think, 11 or 12 clean sheets. He ranked in the top percentiles for aerial duels, ground duels. I think passing was one of his like top percentiles where he did excelled really well in. He was carded one time. In a 35 match season as a center back, it was carded one time. That is insane. He doesn't commit a foul. So that means every tackle he makes is damn near perfect. Like, he doesn't make unnecessary challenges. So we already had one of the best defenses in Europe. And now you add in Belkema and Marianucci, who is a young defender, but I think will do really, really well. And then you also add in Gutierrez, who I think it was like 29 or 30 league matches, 1 goal, 5 assists, high output, offensive player. He ranked in the top percentiles again for successful take-ons, progressive passes. Like, he's always looking to get forward, and you can see it in the way he plays and his stats, which is great because now you have a nice mix of Oliveira playing more defensive or Gutierrez and Spinazzola pushing up the field a little bit more. Elmas returning, I think, is a fantastic thing to have as well. He's the Swiss Army knife of the team. When we won the Scudetto, he begged 10 goals. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I think it's 10 or 11 goals. I think it's 10.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, somewhere in that 7 to 10 goal range. It was a good chunk.
He came off the bench and just scored goals. He was a super sub. And the nice thing is you could have played him anywhere. He was playing in the midfield. He was playing left wing, right? He was so versatile in that sense where you could kind of just plug and play him and he'll do really well, which in this sense, I think he'll either be the backup to McTominay or the backup to Anguissa if you ever need. Maybe even KDB, right? He can play in any which role that you want him to play in. The other thing about Højlund, now going to one of our biggest signings that I think is going to do really well, is Højlund. Going back to what I said about Nathan, about how he didn't get a fair shake, Højlund is on that same boat. 2024-2025 Manchester United was a disaster. 3 manager changes. They finished 15th or something like that in the Premier League. Just a terrible, terrible season. And Manchester seems like the place where people go to die. It doesn't seem like a great place to have a career right now. And these players just don't get a fair shake there. And even still, he scored 4 goals in the Premier League and he scored 6 in Europa League in 15 appearances. He can produce, right? He just needs the team around him to help him out with that, just like any striker. Any striker, you put them in the same boat. If the team's not producing around them, they're not going to score the goals. So I believe with Conte in this system, he'll get you a good 15 goals, probably. Maybe a little bit more. I'd even push it towards 20 across all competitions. All this being said, for, what was it, 11.5 million
net spend. Yeah.
I mean, that is perfect business because we're not accounting for possible Champions League money coming in next year or Champions League money from this season progressing into later stages, which I believe we can do. At least a quarterfinals, I think.
Or the Cavada money, which we never really spent. But I don't count it just because we've already kind of booked that as profit from last year. But
there, right? So the Cavada money as well. And then
yeah.
the thing that you said about amortization, right? You front-loaded these payments where on the books, you only have so much coming in, and then it gets less and less every single year. Or if something doesn't work out and you sell players, you still made a profit on paper at the end of the year, right? So when people are asking, like, how is Napoli able to afford these markets? It's because of smart strategy from front office on their payments. They're deferring their payments over 5 years, spread out so evenly that they can go out and afford it and still be in the green at the end of it, right? So when you look at it from on the paper, on the market, on the accounting side, and then when you look at it from the team side and who we've implemented into this team, we have basically 2 starting 11s for a fraction of the cost that other teams would pour their money into. It's a 10 out of 10 Mercato. We are, and this may be a bit of a bias again, but I think we might be top 5 teams in Europe, just by the way we're set up right now. And I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, you're not the only one to have said it. I'm trying to, if we were to reel off teams off the top of our head, we'd probably say Liverpool, Real Madrid, PSG. Maybe you include Barcelona, maybe you don't. Do you include Man City? I guess we'll find out when we play them. Yeah, but it's up there. I mean, you talked about the financials. Calcio Finanza did a report on the overall spend of, I guess, the top 10, maybe all of Serie A. Napoli, when you factor in the transfer fees, including the amortization of players that we bought in previous seasons, when you factor in the wages, which increased significantly this season, and it's gross wages that the club is paying. And so almost basically double if you add up all the players' net salaries. You got to almost double that to know what the club is paying, because the club pays the taxes. It was just shy of 249 million euros that we spent, which is top in Serie. I think about 10 million or 11 million more than Inter or Juventus. I can't remember. It might have been Juventus, actually, which is crazy because most of the money Juve spent is just amortization of players that didn't work out. So De Laurentiis spent the money on top of all the reasons you reeled off. You mentioned earlier, like, one of our best transfers was not selling Anguissa. You mentioned not selling Lobotka. It seems like forever ago, but there was a point in time where we weren't sure if Conte was staying. That in itself is another massive quote-unquote signing. You mentioned like Marianucci is young. I think one of the things I'm most impressed with, and Conte's talked about this as well in his press conferences, is that we're not just building a team for now. We are also building a team for the future. So we have guys like Marianucci that can be the understudy to Rachmani, or Bokuma that can come in the next season or two. Neres, Noah Lang. There's a really good balance and a nice healthy mix of youth that can develop and senior players and players in their prime. And it feels like a really good kind of mix of all of that to get the maximum out of everyone and maximize the return. And then another thing that we haven't really talked about much lately, but we certainly talked a lot about it at the start of the summer, was the fact that most of this business, yes, there were a couple of players that came down to the wire, like Højlund, which was only the case because it was a reaction to the Lukaku injury. But most of this business was done very early in the summer. And that allowed Conte to have a proper preseason with almost his entire squad. Yeah, there were a couple of injured guys or whatever, but even that in itself was a big win for us, especially for a club that historically has left a lot of these transactions very late. And, as recently as last season, where we didn't get Lukaku, we didn't get McTominay, was it Neres or Gilmore? Yeah, until very, after the season started. So that was also really important. For me, I am going to give this a rating of 9, only because, one, I don't want to sound like you just echo the exact same thing you said, but I would say there were a couple of players we wanted to get that we didn't. We wanted to sign Juan Loon. We weren't able to get that deal done as a backup to Di Lorenzo, so we're forced to kind of play Mazzocchi as our backup, kind of right wing back, because we sold Zanoli to Udinese, which I don't know how great I feel about that. We weren't able to get Dan Ndoye as the left winger that we wanted, and ultimately, for a long time we were saying Noah Lang is not the guy that is the replacement to Cavada. We need someone else, but then we didn't end up signing him. Okay, fine, maybe Almas can play in that role, but we definitely, I wouldn't say lacking, but if Ndoye was the guy we wanted, we weren't able to pull that off. And again, Conte specifically called that out in one of his press conferences. He has this amazing ability to find negatives in positive situations. And I think a lot of that has to do with just controlling expectations and trying to keep the pressure off and, try to position his teams as underdogs no matter what the situation is. And then we were also supposed to, or there were rumors that we were trying to sign Andy Diouf as a Vice, Anguissa, and Inter kind of pulled the rug from under our feet on that one. But at the same time, I hesitate to call those failures just because I do think if Lukaku didn't get hurt, and if we want to see a silver lining in that injury, at least it happened while the Mercato was still open. But if he didn't get hurt, then we wouldn't have spent 50 million euros on Højlund, and that money probably could have been used to buy, Juan Lu and another player. So in any event, I'm gonna rate it a 9, but it's hard to argue that Napoli didn't have the best Mercato of any Serie A club. I would say maybe Milan as a close second, or Roma maybe, but for me, Napoli wins the Mercato. And, hopefully we're not going to be accused of winning the Mercato Scudetto or something like that, like the balance book Scudetti that we have tons of in the trophy.
Hey, but listen, those balance book Scudetti, look what they got us.
Exactly. Right? Now we're starting to reap it's starting to bear fruit, or whatever the expression is.
Yeah.
All right. I know we didn't spend too much time on the Mercato, but I think that's a pretty good summary. We're going to wrap it up there. Carm, as always, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Like I said, I always get, excited and jittery when I get to talk about Napoli, right? Just get my hour out to express all my thoughts and opinions. But no, once again, thank you again. And it's always a pleasure.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Make sure if you're in Toronto, you connect with Carmen, become a member of the Napoli Club Toronto. Actually, before I wrap it up, if you want to just share the details of the gala that's coming up.
Oh, yeah. So about a month's time, October 3rd, which is Friday, October 3rd, we are having our second annual gala. This is being held at the Venetian Banquet Hall. Starts at 6:30 p.m. Think of essentially what is a wedding. So antipasto bar, full course menu.
Italian wedding for
exactly.
Who haven't been to one.
full course menu, antipasto bar, open bar, premium open bar. We have raffles, prizes, DJ entertainments. I mean, it's really it's a great night. Last year we had close to 200 people come. It was about 170, 80 something maybe. Can't remember the exact number, but close to 200 people. And it's not just about, Napoli Club Toronto, but a lot of the things that we do with this money is we donate a portion of the proceeds to, this year would be the Cancer Society of Canada. We want to give back to the community in any way possible. And that I felt like was close to us. I've had family members who have unfortunately passed away or have suffered through cancer. And I'm sure many others have been on the same boats. So if we can help support and donate to people who dedicate their lives to research and early prevention, then we want to help out in any way possible.
No, that's amazing. And just to be clear, you don't have to be a Napoli Club member to attend the gala, right?
No. We have Juventini, Romanisi, everyone coming to the gala. So you don't have to be a Napoli fan at all.
Well, especially when it's for a good cause, of course,
Exactly.
Everybody's welcome. So that's amazing. If you want more information on the gala or on the club, you can find Carm on X at @t_tifoso, or you can find the club account at Napoli Club TO. If you want to get a hold of me, you can find me on X at Joe_Fischetti5 or Forza Napoli Pod, pretty much on all social media. I'm still trying to figure out TikTok, but I'll get there one day. And you can find the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find it on the audio version on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are in the international break now, so I'm not sure exactly when the next episode will be. We'll see. I tend to do these international updates, or maybe I'll do a Primavera pod or something. But in any event, I will be back soon. And until next time, I'm Joe Fischetti. Forza Napoli sempre.